I wonder how you are feeling this morning after the announcement of the winter plan and the tiers that we will be going into once we leave lockdown this coming Wednesday. If your conversations have been anything like mine, both on my front line and within the family, there is likely to be a real mixture of thoughts, feelings, opinions and intentions, some of which you may or may not agree with. And if there is one thing we can be certain, it is that we will not be celebrating in the ways that we have done so in previous years. New ways will need to be found or lived with until things return to normal, or be as normal as it can be. But that doesn't take into account or acknowledge the long-term consequences bubbling along under the surface, be that the impact to the economy or international aid, be that concerns around health, mental health and well-being, be it concerns around finances, perhaps from the individual's perspective with a loss of a job or income, or perhaps from the perspective of a business owner as they face an uncertain future and carry the weight of responsibility for their employees. Be it those who are grieving the loss of a loved one and who are unable to say goodbye. And this is only the tip of the iceberg. In all of this, it is reasonable to think that the outlook is pretty bleak at this time, and it is reasonable to wonder why God is in it all. Our Gospel reading this morning, although at first reading may seem difficult to understand and even quite dark, is perhaps strangely appropriate for this Advent Sunday and where we find ourselves. The passage we read from at the end of Mark 13 is part of a larger body of work which is known as the Little Apocalypse and extends throughout the whole chapter as we have it. In order to make some sense of this, there are some jigsaw puzzle pieces that we need to put together. Firstly, there is the style of writing. It uses apocalyptic language of the Old and New Testament, and specifically that from the book of Daniel, which it quotes directly in verses 14, 19 and 26. Secondly, the setting of teaching is just outside Jerusalem on the Mount of Olives, opposite the temple. Jesus is with Peter, James, Andrew and John. So he's speaking to his disciples, those who have followed him, rather than the crowds. This is also the longest section of Jesus' teaching in Mark, and it has been likened to the farewell discourses which are found in John, Matthew and Luke. And for Mark, it is a reminder to watch for the coming of the Son of Man. Thirdly, the first section of our reading and the preceding verses speak of a persecution and a destruction that is to come, and it points towards the end of the world, with the Son of Man coming and gathering up those who are faithful. This is partly fulfilled in the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and the temple which took place in AD 70, when the Roman army under Titus first besieged and then finally destroyed both the city and temple. But there also remains an element which points towards the future and towards the end of time, the time of which is not yet known and is only known by the Father. Against this backdrop, the parable of the fig tree and the man leaving his servants in charge of the household to await his return are a reminder that there will be signs that will point towards what is coming, and the disciples are to remain awake and to watch out for those signs. So what can we take from this? In preparing this service, in noting where we are and in reflecting on the reading set for today, it does seem to emphasise this sense of darkness and uncertainty, the sense of unfairness and justice that make up our everyday. But at the end of this is the reminder to watch and be alert to the signs of God's kingdom around us. And it reminds us that we have a job and a role to play in it all. This, I find, is the glimmer of hope which points us beyond ourselves and our present into the future hope of all that is to come. As it was said in our opening prayer, knowing that in the dark times there is always a light that can be lit. And as I was pondering this, I realised it was like the reminders to move that Fitbit gives you 10 minutes before the hour. Usually, when I get the buzz on my arm, I frantically jump up and pace the hallway to get in that 250 count. Unless, of course, I am caught up in something. And then I can either feel the vibration but don't move, and then suddenly realise I am past the hour, or I simply miss it altogether. At the start of this Advent season, in a year which has been so different to all that we have known, our Gospel reading reminds us to look ahead and watch for the signs of all that is to come. Amen.